there, Comic Clan, and welcome to Comics in the Cross, the greatest YouTubers you've never heard of. I have come from one of your hosts for today, Cross, joined by Nitro and LG the Paladin for our very special Christmas special of the Indie Comic Book Club. And we are checking out an interesting book that's actually just released. This has actually just came out this month. So we've jumped on this one right away for a Christmas story to go over. And it's called Death Comes for the Toymaker from Magma Comics. Shout out to Magma as well. They've been really helpful in sending us stuff, and it was actually them and Don't Hide PR that sent us this out early to check it out. So thank you so much for sending it to us to have a little look at it. We greatly appreciate it.
Physical version tomorrow from Amazon.
Yes, and you can get the physical version on Amazon. Look at the link down below for our Amazon affiliate link where you can go ahead and buy Death Comes to the Toymaker and physical and digital copies on Amazon. So go and check that out. But guys, we are here for a very interesting Santa story. Very different.
I feel like I need to put some Christmas music on, or maybe some ancient Babylonian music.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. Okay. The premise of this book was already pretty out there. Yeah. The premise of the book, as it was pitched when it got sent to me, was basically Santa Claus that does what he does, and he's allowed his immortality because he's made a deal with death to do death's job one night of the year and give him the night off. So he gives him the night off. Santa has to go around. He takes up Death's scythe. He goes around. He takes people's lives and reaps souls, and that allows him his immortality. That's where it comes from. Mm-hmm. That was already a pretty insane concept to begin with. Like, that was an insane starting premise, but I couldn't have predicted in a million years where this book was going to go. With that concept, I
didn't know that I should have brushed up on my ancient Mesopotamian history before we read this.
I almost feel like,
because I'm like, I know all these names, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah, Nitro, it was weird for you and me. It was weird because, like, I feel like it's that 2 nickels meme of, like, we've covered Enkidu twice on this channel, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice.
Yeah, because I remember I hadn't started reading it yet, and Tolkien Agent had, and we were laying in bed, and she's like, "Do you know who Gilgamesh is?" I was like, "Yeah." And then I started going into conspiracy theory route, and then I was like, "And he had a friend named Enkidu. They fought at first, but then they became good friends."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Why are you asking me that?" And she's like, "Oh, no reason."
Yeah, we got like a crash course in this because we talked to a writer. I've got the comic actually up on my wall, who done a comic called The Epics of Enkidu. And it was about the return of Enkidu to the current world. So, like, when these names started popping up, it was like, oh, I actually know a little bit about this because we looked into this when we covered it before. And I'm like, oh, so I'm not going in blind. I'm like, otherwise it'd be like I would have been so thrown at some of the stuff. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, I know.
Excuse me. I apologize. I'm going to try and cut coughs as much as I can, people, but I have had a dry cough since Thanksgiving. So apologies if my coughs are in here. I'm going to try and mute myself and not make you put up with them. This isn't some awful ASMR video, so don't worry about it. We're not. It's like the coughs of a Scotsman, special ASMR. But what did you guys think of the concept, first of all? And what did you guys think of, like, the direction that it took? Like, because you guys knew a little bit less. Because I was already kind of, like, wanting to cover it and kind of started it before you guys, but what did you guys think?
I'm gonna let LJ kick it off.
Okay, yeah. So I just had read because I was like, okay, I need to start reading this. And so we all operated on the early copy. The first few pages, I was like, okay, like they get the concept down within the first few pages, and like, to me, it's like that's what you would use as, like, you know how like Amazon is like, oh, read it, like usually if there's digital versions, it's like read a free sample or whatever. Like those first few pages are like all you would need to show somebody for the concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then after that is when it goes into like, oh, okay, there's lore, and half of the comic is like the whole like lore and the build and like how everything really plays out, and I think that's fantastic. it's almost like a Godfather Part 2 kind of thing, where in that movie you follow the early life of you know the Don and everything like that, and at the same time you're also getting the modern stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's just I like that concept of like telling a story a lot, because I feel like there's something else. I don't know if it was something I watched or something not too long ago, but that concept of like showing things happening and then like going into flashbacks, or not even just flashbacks, but telling the origin of it all and the happenings of it, of everything that happened before, alongside the main story, I think is really cool. So just for it to go that deep, and it went to this whole other direction that I think is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just this like short story of like, oh, here's what happens and these two are going to fight. It's like, oh no, these characters actually have way more history. And taking the concept and giving it a new lore and a new, like, because there's the Santa Claus and death are two things that, like, oh, like, they're Santa Claus, Grim Reaper, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But like, let's take that concept and enhance it more and give it some more depth, and I think that was really cool.
Yeah, I liked the premise. I thought it was really, really cool. Like, basically death switching with Santa Claus for a day, and Santa Claus taking on the role of death. I thought that was a really, really cool concept.
Yeah.
And like you said, LJ, I think they nailed it. Like first 5 pages, they nailed it.
Yeah.
And then, well, obviously we're going to get into it, but they jump into basically all the build up, what got them to this point over the thousands, over the millennia. Who were these characters? Who are Death? Who is, Saint Nicholas, who we find out is actually Gilgamesh, and we find out Death is actually Enkidu. And they basically, like 85% of the story is just backstory of how they got to where they're at.
Yeah.
I personally found myself wanting more of the modern part of the story. Like, I would have loved to see, we get a glimpse of it, but I would have loved to see Santa doing Death's job, because that was the premise of the comic, right? That's the premise of the comic. Like, he makes this deal that he doesn't like, but he takes the place of Death for a day. And I wanted more of that. I wanted more of that, like, because he's obviously doesn't like it. He has this conflict within him. I want to see him going through that in modern day. And you mentioned Godfather 2. One thing that does really well is it goes from modern to flashback to modern to flashback. It kind of bounces back and forth. I kind of wish this story did something similar, because we're stuck way in the past for basically the entire story. And then right at the end, like last 2 pages, we get a blip of, where they're at now. So
yeah, I can definitely see that. I can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
so
almost like it's almost like they flipped the story.
Yeah.
You know how like it's the modern story is meant to be the current one, and then you get like kind of like playing D&D.
Yeah.
You got the current story that's going on, and then you drop in the lore and the backstory to help enhance what's going on. It's almost like, well, we've got the modern to kind of show what we're doing it for, and then like we spend so much time in the background of it.
Yeah, because I think it would have been so interesting to, as he's going along in the night, in that day, to drop bits of lore here and there, like, oh, how did he get his bag? Oh, how did Enkidu end up just bones? How did Gilgamesh become freaking Santa Claus? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Like, what's this deal? Like, why does he do it one night a week?
Guilt too is kind of like, when you think about it more and more, like for him to have that guilt is like crazy.
Yeah, I didn't not like the story.
No.
Right.
But I feel like it could have been told differently, and I feel like it would have been more effective. Personally.
I think I definitely enjoyed the story. I think I definitely liked it. I liked it for what it was. It was something that I found myself continuing to want to read and see what happened. It was definitely something that caught my attention.
It was an amazing story that's well written.
Yeah, it's like, kudos to the writer, kudos to the artist. They did a great job on it. I think it was done really well. It's, you know what I mean? We've read absolute awful written stuff and absolutely awful drawn stuff before. This is not that in the slightest. And this is definitely a talented writer and artist. I think my thing was, like, I would love to have cut out some of the past that we've seen to see some of the past that we didn't see.
Mm.
Because something that kept coming to mind for me was we got the backstory up until basically Enkidu became Death, until and Gilgamesh trying to basically becoming the one who would go and give toys and why that came about.
Yeah.
But the backstory stopped there. And I feel like there was so much more story after that to tell of how we got from there to where we are today. Just in simple concept of like, well, how did these two end up making the deal? How did these two come to this conclusion?
Yeah.
And I think the thing I wanted to know the most was like, what was it just the guilt that was getting to Gilgamesh? Because he seemed to like really have it in for Enkidu.
Yeah.
He seemed to have a real issue because like the whole concept of the book is him trying to keep his immortality that he gets from doing his deal with Death without having to like still be a Reaper once a year. And his whole story like for that is that he's going to go kill the god of gods.
Yeah.
And then use his body to create a new world and trap Enkidu there. And I think
they kind of touch on it.
That's not a man who's guilty of like casting his friend into that position of like being this, like Reaper of Death and working for the God of Death. To then like, oh yeah, by the way, to get out of my deal, I'm going to just stick you in this world yourself so that I don't have to deal with you. And I'm like, that doesn't come across as guilty. And I'm like, I feel like from the friendship they had to where we were, it went from like 0 to 100.
I agree.
And we don't see how we got between, like, not in depthly. And I'm like, I kind of want to know that journey of how did we get to here?
Yeah. I do think they kind of touch on it right at the end when I think this is probably one of the best parts of the book, at least the past part, is when Enkidu's like, dude, that wasn't a punishment. Like me asking you to do that wasn't a punishment. It's because I wanted to be close to you. Yeah. Like I want us to remain close. Even when I fought you, it's because I wanted to be close to you. And then Gilgamesh realizes, holy crap, like he wasn't trying to punish me. This wasn't like a punishment.
Well, that's it. I want to know how Gilgamesh got to the point of like almost this hatred towards Enkidu and wanting to basically get rid of him, because Enkidu has none of that. Yeah. He has none of that. He's still chill. Like even when he comes to see him to like give him his like, his scythe to do the reaping, he's so chill with him. I'm like, I don't have an issue with you.
I love how they write him though. It's hilarious.
It's really brilliant. Yeah. He's probably my favorite character in it. He's just so laid back. So
I like he's not called Noah in the book, but it's basically Noah, the dude on the ark. I forgot his name.
Yeah.
He's like got a sugar obsession and he can't stop drinking hot chocolate. Dude, that's freaking hilarious.
That's awesome.
Real quick shout out though to the artist. I think it's Ryan Cody is the artist. Really cool art. It's very unique. It reminded me of, this is what I was going to say before we started. And I was like, nope, I'm going to stop. It reminded me of Ryan Otley and Corey Walker, or Ryan Otley and Corey Walker from Invincible. Yeah. It has that same like, it's, I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, but it's like really angular, really vivid, punchy art that I really liked. And I think it fit this story really well. And it was done very well.
Yeah, I guess in a way it has a lot of expression, like you definitely see the emotion behind the characters and just everything that's happening on the panels. Like,
yeah, it was really cool.
It was very clear. I was never confused with what was going on in the panel, really. Everything flowed, the wording flowed. Whoever did the lettering, I can't remember. I don't want to do that.
Micah Myers, I think, was the letterer.
Micah Myers, I don't want to not say the name. So Micah Myers did the lettering. I felt like the lettering, how they had different font for Death, different font for Lilith, different font for Marduk. And Gilgamesh, I thought that was cool. I thought the way they did that was cool.
But kind of like we talked about last month, it's like there was different kind of lettering, but it didn't take you out of the story this time.
Yeah, it didn't take me out of the story.
It just was like, oh, this is who's speaking, and you were able to just still follow it. And shout out to Ryan Cody as well because I'm guessing he did the colouring as well, because there's not a separate colorist listed. It just says him for art. So shout out for the colouring. The colouring is very unique. It's very colourful yet muted, which is really interesting. It gives that kind of snowy, far-off tale sort of feeling to it, like this journey off to far-off land sort of fantasy tale, which was really which I think worked well for it. You know,
Yeah, I really like the art. I thought it was good, and I thought the coloring was great because if, you compare the ancient like background stuff to the modern day stuff, and you can tell a difference. There's a difference in the coloring, the way they color it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It's not distracting. It's cool.
yeah. No, and it's like it was a really cool art style for it. It was a really unique for it. Excuse me. I thoroughly enjoyed the art for it. Like I said, like Dakota Brown's writing and Ryan Cody's art, I don't think are majorly at fault here. You know, like I said, I would also prefer the story maybe laid out differently and focusing on separate parts. But the art of it was beautiful, and I felt like the writing was actually really good. Like the dialogue was written well, the layout of stuff was written well for the most part.
Yeah.
I actually think it was done a good job. Just obviously, like we said, like I wanted more Santa and Death and less Gilgamesh and Enkidu.
Yeah. I felt like the story. I feel like the story was written well. I just feel like it would. I felt like I wish it was structured differently. And to
Yeah,
your point, Cross, I feel like there's gaps in how we got from where they were to where we are now that I would have loved to see filled.
yeah. Like there was so much focus on stuff like in the Mesopotamia sort of age that I don't think we needed to.
Mhm.
Like, because we kick off at the very beginning when basically Gilgamesh meets Enkidu for the first time, and we kick off the flashbacks with that, with them fighting each other. They accidentally create Death's Scythe when Gilgamesh's sword gets trapped in Enkidu's staff. They create the Reaping Scythe accidentally, which is I thought was a really cool kind of foreshadowing of what was to come.
Yeah.
And then the two of them building this kind of respect and friendship for each other and standing with each other, and then we almost spend a lot of time in Uruk where Gilgamesh is king.
Yeah.
And nothing happens.
Yeah.
Like it felt like we got like flashes to like his relationship with some of the gods, and it was basically like watching Gilgamesh just bang a bunch of women.
Yeah.
Like I felt like we went back to watch him just bang a bunch of women. I feel like we get it. He's the king. He likes to sleep around. Like okay, got it.
Yeah. It doesn't really add to the story.
There's a lot of time going into the past where I'm like I wanted to focus on like that, and then like focus on like because your main pitch for this was Santa and Death.
Yes.
And then you do the great twist of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, which I don't think is a bad twist. I think it's an intriguing twist for it.
That could have been like maybe a chapter possibly or something. Or
but
like
you need to show us how we went from these two being rivals to best of friends to hating each other, or at least Gilgamesh hating Death.
Yeah.
Like, you need to show us that progression in that story, and I don't think we got a progression centric on that. There was so much focus on the past, and I'm like, but your focus should be the friendship. Your focus should be like a character study of Gilgamesh.
That relationship should be, front and center.
Yeah, front and center. Yeah. That's your selling point of like, because you've already intrigued me with these two characters, and now you've told me how these two characters know each other and were friends.
Yeah.
Show me that. And I feel like there wasn't enough focus on that. Like, they were together, but that was it. And then to see the focus then go of like, well, they stood up against the gods, and then what happens to Enkidu and him becoming like, that could have been him becoming Death, and when he's transformed and Gil's like guilt for it could literally have been issue 2.
Yeah.
And then issue 3, like focusing on what happened with the relationship, why Gilgamesh pulled himself back, why he felt like he wanted to just pull back. Was it guilt? Was it something else? And then the deal was made, showing the Enkidu come to him with the deal as a chance to try and keep the friendship alive. And like, I can still see you once a year if we do this, and then have the whole last issue focus on the whole thing of like, trying to kill the god of gods, trying to kill and take his place, and focus it not in a way of like trying to destroy the god to create a world to put Enkidu in, so that you can keep your immortality, but as a way of helping your friend. alleviating your guilt, I can keep my immortality and I can free you, and have the two of them come back together maybe for that.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been a better kind of like boom, boom, boom bullet point focus for it. Because that's what ends up happening anyway, is like the two of them end up working together by the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I feel like it was a case of, it could have just been laid out a bit differently and we could have still got there.
I will say, go ahead, LJ.
I was just saying, I wonder when you, like, I don't know how, getting a comic published or anything like that works, but it's like, I wonder if, like, there was an idea there, but that idea was only, just maybe like, oh, we'll do this in one volume, or like, hey, this is an idea, that could go multiple, because it's like basically one story, right? Now it's just like, it is just one story. So I wonder if there was sacrifices that had to have been made there, because like, I don't know how, again, I don't know how it works, but maybe it's like, oh, we would like to do more volumes of this. I don't know if the people will necessarily like it. So here, let's just squish it down into one story.
That's actually a good point.
I would love it to be taken across multiple volumes if that was the case, because then you could do, because then we could touch on all that, because like the whole relationship of building of the relationship and everything, and seeing seeing them, and what makes their relationship so strong. One volume, like you could go do the flashbacks kind of first volume, kind of do the relationship thing maybe at some point, and then like if it took 2 volumes, then we could get into the more modern stuff and see that progression of Gilgamesh, like feeling that guilt and being just tired of it. But then it's like, oh, but yeah. So then, like, I think because it's down into one story now, it's like, oh, like so Gilgamesh feels guilty, like you were saying, but it's like, okay, but why is he still so driven about keeping his mortality? So it's like, I wish it was spread out a little more.
I definitely think the story would better be served split into like volumes, like you said. I think both of you kind of touched on that a little bit. Because like you think about like maybe volume 1 would be the introduction of the concept, and at the end you have a stinger of, oh, we're in ancient Babylon now. And then you have a whole volume of set in ancient Babylon. And then maybe another one set in ancient Babylon, which is in closer to the modern times.
Right.
And I think it would be cool. And there's other stuff in there that I don't think necessarily like pays off, like the whole Lilith thing. Like I get that she's important at the very end of that, but I feel like they built that up really, really big. Like when they ripped her out of the tree and they threw her in the Euphrates and all that stuff, they built it up to be really big. And
the ending with her comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The ending with her and what she chooses to do, there was no build up, it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know the character of Lilith in the stories from before. I don't know if she was flighty at all or did stuff like that or anything like that. Maybe it is.
End up like killing her or something at the end, because they're like, oh crap, Lilith has the power of the god of gods now.
Yeah.
Oh no, okay. Like, what are you gonna do?
Like, I mean, like at the end, she's like, okay, you can have more immortality. You can have your skin back. The deal's off. Like, you don't have to do that.
Her concept introduce her getting that power does introduce the concept of like free will, which I found interesting.
Yes.
But that was kind of it. I'm like, okay, like so, like what does that mean though? Like, that should already be a thing. Kind of.
Well, I felt like we could have done a bit more focus on the gods in general though, because like I felt like with the gods that we got, we didn't get a lot of stuff on them.
Yeah.
We spent a weird amount of time with the god of war. I can't remember what her name is.
Ishtar.
That was it.
It did take a minute to keep up with who was who and
I was Googling a lot as I was reading.
I lost track of names. Yeah. I couldn't keep track of certain names, and I'll be honest, I still don't know how to pronounce the elves.
Yeah.
Like which were the other immortals that Gil was with. I still have no clue how to actually say their names. I'm not even attempting it because I will butcher it. But I felt like we spent a lot of time with Ishtar and her relationship with Gil. And I felt like it didn't go anywhere.
Right.
I felt like there wasn't a point to it. Like I thought I felt like there'd be a payoff of like she would somehow play a point in the final fight or the final face-off and confrontation. And it wasn't. It was Lilith. It's Lilith that kills what's his face and becomes the new god of gods. And,
I thought Death was gonna do it. I thought Enkidu was gonna do it.
Yeah, which would make sense because he's the arbiter of death now. So him to actually do it
I thought he
himself.
was gonna see what was happening to Gil and just be like, "Nah, I can't handle this." Like,
Yeah.
Hey there, Comic Clan. Did you know that Comics in the Cross are also on Patreon as well? For as little as just $2 a month, you can get access to all of our content from YouTube early before it drops here. That includes reviews for our comic books, tabletop gaming and video game channels, as well as the Indie Comic Book Club and our Let's Talk Comic interview show. Also, there is exclusive content available just to our Patreon subscribers. That includes watch-alongs, interviews, and a lot of behind-the-scenes information and goings-on in Comics in the Cross. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in checking out, then please go and check out the link for patreon.com/comicsinthecross. And if you do choose to support us and partner with us, then we are super grateful for that. And thank you so much for your kind and generous support. But for now, that's all from me. Let's head on back into your video. But like for Lilith to do it, I felt like we needed more from the gods. Like I would love to have seen a bit more background. Like even still, like the whole stuff that started, like why he wanted to take away like the gods' involvements with the humans.
Mm-hmm.
I just know the name Lilith ends up getting associated with like demons and stuff, and like that kind of thing. Like the villain of the Diablo 4 is basically the demon Lilith. Like
it's like the demon Lilith is one of those things.
I expected big things out of that name because I was like, oh yeah, this character's going to cause problems, but she really didn't.
No, but I would love to have found out, like, well, is this what she was like as the previous, like, the original version of her in Gilgamesh and the Epics of Gilgamesh? And I would love to have kind of just spent a bit more time with them and getting who they were and why they were doing what they did. Like, why did Lilith kill him and then choose to give them free will? Because I feel like she didn't even know why.
Yeah,
that's true.
For a character that was introduced,
she gave them everything they wanted,
and it's like, but it's one of those things. Like, it's not like she's been introduced; she's been barely introduced, but it's not like she's been introduced as like a benevolent god who's quite happy to work with the humans. She just wants to still be connected with the humans. She didn't think like we should pull away from them. That doesn't mean you just give Gil and Enkidu what they want.
Yeah.
Like, why did you do that? What benefit is it to you? It's like, are you trying to say that you're the good god? That you're like quite happy to do this for them? Because if you are, please set it up. Please set up that that's a thing that might happen, or give me some sort of hint, not just a random character doing it.
And like, this is where I think the story could be better served, just spread out and let it breathe.
I feel like, there was a lot of this that could have... The story was good for what it was.
Yeah.
But it needed time to breathe.
Yeah.
We needed time to soak up and absorb, like, the gods and the world of, Enkidu and Uruk and Gilgamesh and that old Mesopotamian society and the transformation to the modern world and the modern relationship with them. And like Gil's like whole thing of keeping his immortality is like, I'm going to have to kill him, kill the god of gods, just like he did with Tiamat. Which, by the way, try to read that, like the god of gods killed Tiamat and not see a 5-headed dragon. Every time he said that, because we're D&D players, and like that's all I could think of was like the previous.
When Tiamat showed on the page, I was like, that's not what I imagined.
That's not what comes to my mind. And I'm like, no, and I'm like, all I can see is Tiamat for D&D.
Like all these names I know, like other media has used. So when I think of Gilgamesh, I think of like the character from like Fate, like the Fate anime, stuff like that. And again, like Lilith and stuff. And I'm like, all these names have been used elsewhere, so it's like trying to get that stuff.
Well, that's it. For anyone that doesn't know as well, like Gilgamesh is like basically the original hero story, essentially. Yeah. The original hero story from way back in ancient Mesopotamia. He was the original like hero turns like demigod and like ascends at the end of the epics and stuff.
And that's like even where Hercules deviates from, or comes from.
Yeah, like all of that stuff, it all goes back to Gilgamesh. He is like the original for that. He's the earliest text I found on that stuff.
Yeah.
So he literally is like the blueprint of the hero warrior.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. I think I was starting to think at least an extra volume could have helped this, but I honestly think a trilogy.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Like at least 3.
Death Comes for the Toymaker. You could have done a slight like play on the title, for each of them, and have 1, 2, and 3, and and it doesn't even have to be like one set here, one set here, one set here. If you plan it out properly, you could do the jumping about and show a bit of the past, but you need to do kind of like what TV shows do, where we do flashback to this part, and how it relates to modern day. You know,
I think it would have been really cool to see the modern day story front and center, with pops of ancient Mesopotamia in there, showing how we got specific things, you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think like the showing of something in the past, like an adventure they went on, or a lesson they learned, or like, I'm kind of thinking like how, literally the thing that's coming to my mind is probably the weirdest thing to describe it as, is kind of like the Arrow TV show. How they spent the whole flashbacks of like I think seasons 1 and 2, the whole flashbacks were him and Slade Wilson.
Yeah.
Him in early Deathstroke. And it's like, and even before Deathstroke came to the modern day stuff, that friendship was shown. And I'm like, I'd love to have seen like flashbacks of like what made their friendship so strong. Of Gil and Enkidu and going on an adventure, or something happening, or a life lesson being taught, and how that affects Gilgamesh now as Santa.
Yeah.
Even if Enkidu's not around for this, even if he's not here at this part, even if it's not a focus on him, how it's affecting Gil, because Gil's our main character. And then, of course, you bring in like their relationship and how it is in the modern time, and kind of like how that built up to. Because how you seen that build up in Arrow, how you seen like Oliver Queen and Slade Wilson were best of friends on that island when they met, but you know it's coming to a head.
Yeah.
And you could literally have built up to that, of like showing their past, their friendship, with the build up to it coming to a head, because you know at some point it's got to break.
Yeah.
Something's got to happen, and you could have used that anticipation to get there. You know, and I feel like that would have been a more interesting take on it, because you then get to see the friendship, get to see the stuff that they did, get to reference things that happened while seeing the modern stuff. And kind of like you said, Nitro, of like, I'd love to have seen more of the modern, even more of Gil doing the being death.
That's what I'm saying.
Because like, we seen them like once do it, and he was like, no, I'm done. I'm finding a way out of this. Well, what pushed you to that point? You've apparently been doing it for centuries, for millennia.
I want to see him ripping souls out of people. I know that sounds morbid, but like, that's a really cool premise to me. Santa Claus is killing people, basically.
Why is this the breaking point, though? You saw this one kid and you're like, I can't do it. I can't keep doing that. I'm like,
right.
Let me see you breaking. Let me see what broke you. Why did that one get you? Because I have no doubt that you've reaped many children along with many adults over your time, because death doesn't choose. Death doesn't have a preference.
Yeah.
You know? And like you doing that, and you could still have kept in a lot of the story that was there. Like, I love the realization as well of like Gil coming to the realization of like Enkidu basically telling him like, I don't like what I do. You think I want to do this? You think I chose this?
Yeah.
Because he almost like that, you're choosing to go and do this. Like, you were freaking there when I was cursed.
Yeah.
You think I want to go and reap souls from people? From children to do all of this? Like, no. That's not what I'm choosing. It's like, I feel like, it could have honestly benefited just from that expansion and those concepts. There's a lot more story there that could have been allowed to breathe.
I want to say, and that is, to me, the fact that we want more is absolutely not a negative. Like,
no,
like,
I think that's a sign that there's a good thing there.
Where we need to see more between the lines, you know?
Yeah, and I want to be clear, like, what we have, we like, right? The story is there, the concept is there.
Absolutely.
The art is phenomenal.
That's why I was trying to say, like, I don't like, it's the layout, the setup of it. The kind of like, that's the part I'm kind of like, that's a bit, I feel like, and why I'm also trying to praise Dakota Brown as the writer, because I honestly liked what we got.
Yeah.
I just felt like it was a pacing almost problem.
Yeah.
It was a pacing problem. It was a structure problem, in my opinion.
That's what I was looking for, structure.
And it was, I don't want to say a promise not delivered, because that's not true. But your premise, the premise is Santa is death for a day every year. I want to see more of that. That's your premise. That's what the hook of the book is. I want to see more of that. Not that needs to be most of it. I just want to see more. I want to see, like you said, Cross. I want to see him battling with that, like the morality of reaping souls, basically. And then, like, what got him to the point where he saw that little kid, and now the kid is on the naughty list, and he's like, I can't do it anymore. I just took this kid's dad's soul, and now he's on the naughty list because he doesn't like me. But, I want to see more of that.
Yeah,
I want to see him go through that struggle and that push, because, like, for a man who's like his whole drive, and that's the great thing, the whole story of Gilgamesh before it is his seeking immortality. So I love that it's on point with that story, like him still trying to keep his immortality all these years later. Like all of that stuff.
Funny, it's almost his undoing, and it's like death. The only reason he still has his mortality because death is, oh, you messed up. I got you though.
Yeah,
it's like death. I was like, is that a thing? I think you're making me do this for this, and I'm like,
him falling asleep to the snake, getting the reed, by the way, or the weed, made me laugh. I was like, that's funny because he, they showed that part before where where he nodded out, but I just, for whatever reason, that part made me laugh because I'm just like, oh yeah, you keep doing this to yourself. Like, there was some genuinely funny moments in it.
Yeah, dude, those two L's with the Gatling gun, I was laughing my butt off. That was hilarious. That was awesome.
I love throughout the story as well, kind of like you said, LJ, like Gil is really his own undoing so much at this time. Like almost the whole story. I'm like, you did this to yourself. Like you're trying to. It's that thing of almost like I'm trying to lie to get out of a lie.
Yeah,
it's like I've done this to try and get immortality, and it freaking backfired. And now I'm trying to do this to keep my immortality, and it's freaking back. It's like he just keeps putting himself in loops. It's like, stop, you're doing it to yourself, man. And that's always like Enkidu's thing is like, I will help you out here, and it's like, you're making me reap souls. I'm like, dude, I'm doing you a favor.
Yeah.
You're the one that wants immortality above everything else, and you're having a go at me. But this was definitely a really interesting take for a Christmas story, though. This was a really interesting book, and it's like, it definitely wasn't what I expected, but that was a good thing. I like, because I kind of said to the guys beforehand of like, on the channel this year, like doing Christmas, I wanted to cover any Christmas books that were coming out, and it just so happened that 2 of the 3 books that were Christmas specific were horror anthologies. And like, okay, horror anthologies, it's a subgenre to itself. People love horror Christmas stuff. Fair enough. The amount of evil Santas we've gotten, and I've watched YouTube videos talking about Christmas horror movies and stuff, and we talked a lot about them as well. Like just stuff like Krampus, or like Santa's Evil, or like Silent Night, Deadly Night, and all these different things, like these Santa killers, or people dressed as Santa killing people, or evil Santas. Like, it's such a done concept.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the subversion of Santa into something completely different.
Yeah, I've never seen this done before. Nothing like this.
This is a backrap crazy concept of like that. Hey, what if this? And I'm like, this is why I love comics, is this concept, because somebody literally went, what if that was a thing?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like, that's what I love about comics, because it's that twist on stuff. I absolutely adore it. But 100%. I feel like the biggest crime of this one is it needed more room to breathe into pacing and structure.
Yeah.
At the least 2 volumes, possibly even 3, and you could have literally had that classic here.
Which unfortunately for me, I don't want to say it's a deal breaker, because it had this comic has so much going good for it, but if somebody asked me, hey, is there a cool Christmas comic I can read? I would probably recommend something else, to be frank. Yeah.
I mean, like, this is literally on par, or it was heading to be on par with one of those comics that I would tell people to read at Christmas time, along with Klaus.
Yes. That's what I was thinking.
It's got the potential for that.
Yep, because I literally started reading this with a cup of coffee near the Christmas tree, and I'm just like, it's cold. I'm like, it's legit. And then so like to get into that lore was not necessarily a bad thing. Oh, there's definitely a lot of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I feel like the greatness was there. It didn't
You have to be a
quite.
little open-minded, I think, to enjoy it. Because
Yeah.
it's not just going to be like they definitely they definitely hook you. They get you to take the bait for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it as well. I think people need to be aware going into this. For anyone who is watching, it's like not a lot of people are going to go in wanting the Santa is death concept and then getting it sidelined a little bit for a story of ancient gods.
Yeah.
I love ancient gods. I love all the lore, all that sort of stuff. This was
really like
right up my alley to go into that stuff. So it was a really fun subversion for me to go into that stuff. Like I love. I'm a dungeon master. I love lore and expanding worlds and all this stuff. That's my whole shebang. I love that stuff. I absolutely adore it. I just don't think it's spread enough for me.
For me,
it wasn't
like
fleshed out enough.
The analogy that pops into my head is like you have this cup of clear liquid on the table and you think it's Sprite, right? And you go to take a sip and it's water. Water's not bad. Water's really good. But you were expecting something and you got something else. Yeah, and you got something else and it left me just a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, there just wasn't quite the fizz and pop that you were hoping for. Not that it's bad, but like it didn't pop in quite the way that you were expecting. No, absolutely.
That's very well said.
I think that's a really fair assessment analogy of it, to be honest. Like it's an enjoyable story. Like we've got the link down below. Go click on it and check it out if you're intrigued at all.
Like I definitely still bought it, and it's going in my collection, because I enjoyed it. But
I enjoyed the story.
I wouldn't say it's for the same reasons that you would buy like a Christmas or winter themed book for. I'm like, I actually really love this concept.
Yeah. Like it might be something I pick up again to read at some point. I can't say it's going to be a must read that I'm going to pick up every Christmas to read.
Right.
Like it's not going to be my Christmas read every year, but I might go back and check it out and be like, okay, let's go and re-go over this.
Yeah.
Which I'd like to clarify and say as well, I'm not a big person on going back and rereading stuff. I've got such a list of stuff that I want to read. I tend to don't go back and read stuff because I'm like, no, I'm going to keep going forward because I want to get through the crap I still need to read.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot for me to reread something, but like reading something like Klaus at Christmas is a lot more of an idea of something I would want to go to. And don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I know that's a really high bar.
Yeah.
Because it's Grant Morrison and Dan Mora. Like that's a freaking Olympic bar to get over. That is an Olympic bar to get to. I'm not saying it has to be at that level.
Yeah.
I don't want it to come across as a super negative review because honestly, I'm not feeling negative on the book. I actually did enjoy it. For the most part. I enjoyed the concept of it. I enjoyed the writing in it. I enjoyed the art in it. I felt like that little room to breathe and it could have been phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to return back to this world and see them do.
I'm curious to know what Joy thought. Did y'all talk about it at all? Or I guess y'all may not have had the time.
We didn't have a time to talk through it thoroughly, but I think she shares a lot of the same views that I do, and probably a little more intensely, but but yeah.
No, absolutely.
Cool. I was curious.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's most of the major stuff. Like if you're going into this expecting a Santa story, you're definitely not getting that. If you're going for a Santa subversion, you will. But go into it expecting lore and go into it expecting epic fantasy as well as like Santa and death.
Mm-hmm.
Which by the way as well, shout out as well to Enkidu in the book. 100% probably my favourite character in it.
Yeah,
I thought he was so well written and just came across as such the most chill, nice guy in the world in every situation. And I'm like, he's just been given a bad lot. But he's just so chill about everything and just kind of getting on with it.
He almost kind of has his own innocence because the only thing he's ever known was civilization. So he's like, because at first everybody was trying to get the beast out there.
Yeah. Like he was such a fun character, and I felt like Gil was on par to be something amazing if we just fleshed him out a little.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I feel like I'm going around in circles talking now, but it's just there was a lot of time spent in the past, but not a lot was done with it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
But overall, I would say go check it out if it's intrigued you, if this has caught your attention at all, and check it out. Why not? Go and check it out. We love the people over at Magma Comics. They're all trying some amazing new stuff and dropping amazing new books over there. And it's an amazing little company that I'd never heard of before a few months ago, but they've actually got some really cool stuff coming out of there. So go and give them a shout out and go and give them a hit up for that.
100%.
Yeah, and thanks for sending us a review copy. This was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you for sending that out to us. Because shout out to them. They're the ones that got us to check out a bunch of stuff. We checked out the Pedestrian was the first one we checked out. Shout out to those guys over there. Got to talk with them. It was absolutely amazing. And then also Day of the Dead Girl, the book by AJ Mendez and Amy Garcia, the actress and the former wrestler.
Nice.
So we got to check out a bunch of stuff from Magma. So thank you for sending that stuff all our way to check out. And did you guys have anything else you wanted to kind of say on this? Any other stuff to kind of?
No, I feel like we said what we needed to say. Yeah, like I said, the stuff that hits. Like the art is awesome. The story is cool. The hook is cool. The lettering is incredible. It's just, I just wish it would have been structured differently. I think if it would have been structured differently, this would have 100% gone into a must read for me every Christmas.
Absolutely. Like it was on the verge of greatness.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it had the potential to be it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else, LJ, or are you all good for it?
The one thing I was thinking that I'd almost be tempted to like, these are characters I feel like I would want to like draw my own versions of, just because it has me thinking of like, oh, the concept of Santa Claus and the Grim Reaper, like that's a great concept, and it could probably really be like in being like that they did so much with it, like lore wise and everything, and like gave it history, and I'm like, oh, like there could be a lot of different takes on this story. So
Yeah.
it might have to be a drawing exercise I might do for myself one, just to like, how would I envision these characters, or how do I want to? How would I, take that vision? So
yeah, that's
just
cool.
From just a concept art perspective, I really liked it in that way. Like there could be so many different versions of these two characters.
No, absolutely. And so yeah, thank you folks for hanging out with us for Indie Comic Book Club this month. Merry Christmas to you all. Hope you all have an absolutely amazing holiday, and happy holidays for whatever holiday you celebrate coming up. And hope you all have an amazing end of the year as well. Hang out with us, go and check out our fellow YouTube channels, Comics Across Tabletop, and of course Comics Across Gaming that LG is kind of the main man over there for. Go and check out his amazing stuff for that. We've all got some more Christmas stuff dropping before the end of the month, and then we'll see you all in the new year. Remember, it's a good week to be a geek. Take care. We'll see you all soon.
Adios.
Peace.